You went to school for 5 years, took out a loan, do all this stuff, only to be making $15 an hour, minimum wage. Hey, it's Tony here, and welcome to Better Architects. Today, we're going to see if Ivy League architecture schools are worth it. I mean, of course, being worth it or not is very subjective, but in this case, I'm going to try to look at it in an objective way. So worth it in this case means 3 things. You have 1, easier time landing a job after you graduate. 2, with that first job, do you have a higher salary? And if you do, is it significantly higher? And 3, will it help you make more in your lifetime? So let's first take a look at the undergrad schools. I'm going to switch over to my desktop here. Now, I like this list from Intelligent Design Rankings because they're pretty transparent with their ranking methodologies. This is the most admired schools, top 10. We have the undergraduates on one side and then graduates on the other side. Now today we're just going to be looking at the undergraduate side, and I've taken this list, the top 10, taken all this, and I've broken it down for you in this Excel. So we have the top here, and only one of it is actually an Ivy League. You can look at the top 10 as being kind of Ivy League when it comes to architecture programs, although not only one of the top 10, at least in the undergrads, are actually Ivy League. Also, the other thing is a lot of the Ivy League schools like Harvard and Yale that does actually have architecture programs, those are master programs. So those are also would be in a different category. So quick fact, if you have a bachelor's of architecture degree, your master's in architecture will be shortened to maybe about 1 or 2 years for you to get the actual degree. Now, if you have a degree in something else, like an associate's degree or a bachelor's of science in somewhere else, then you will need that full 3 years to get your master's degree in architecture. So keep that in mind. So now the question becomes, does going to the Ivy League really make it easier for you to get hired after you graduate? Well, the answer is we don't know because we only have one school at the top here is Ivy League. However, then the question rephrased is, does going to the top 10 school increase your chances of being hired after you graduate? And the answer to that is actually yes, it does. So in this column here, column E, I've created the MH ranking. Now, MH ranking actually is the most higher ranking that the Design Intelligence ranking website has. And the way they do it is actually if you go to the most hired school here, and of course you could go here yourself, but they actually break it down by different categories, which is schools with 100 plus graduates, all the way down to group number 5 with schools less than 20 graduates here. So I took the top 10 most admired, then I took the most hired, and I want to see where they stack up. So it looks like the top 10 most admired are also in the top 10 most hired group. So Cornell, most hired, number 3. And also, keep in mind that these numbers fluctuate year after year. As you can see, Harvard was number 8, and now it's number 1. Chances are that if you are in the top 10 most admired schools, then you will also have a better chance of being hired. However, though, don't get too down if your school or the school that you're planning on applying to or the school that you're attending now is not part of the top 10. It doesn't mean that you won't get hired. Why? Because out of all the important factors, a school attendance is actually ranked near the bottom of the list of important factors that hiring companies pay attention to. And that is only above experiences like studying abroad and GPA. So those 3 factors make up the bottom of the list. So the most important metric is actually design excellence, then followed by previous work experience, then followed by technology adoption. Now the second question has to do with salary, but before getting into the salary, I want to do a comparison of the tuition cost for each of these schools. Now in the Excel here, you can see that I have added on the tuition for all these top 10 for the 2021-2022 year. So 3 out of the 10 schools I've highlighted in bold, and the reason I've done that is because they are state universities, and the 7 out of the 10 are actually private universities. There is a huge difference in terms of tuition cost. For the state universities, you have Virginia Tech, California Poli-Sci, and University of Texas. Those, if you live in the state, there are 8 in-state tuition costs which are much lower than your out-of-state tuition. For the rest of the schools, They're private schools, so they all have just regular tuition costs. There is no in-state. The average undergrad architecture program is 5 years long, so if you take those yearly tuition costs and just simply multiply them by 5 for the 5-year program, you get all this. And also keep in mind that this does not include other costs like books, supplies, health insurance. For some reason is mandatory. I don't know, when I went to school there wasn't health insurance, as well as food and housing. So all of this is not included, and yet you can already see that if you don't have any sort of financial aid or scholarships or any way to subsidize your cost, they can rack up to a lot of money. Down here at row 14, I'm including the City College of New York, and this is the city university that I went to. Design Intelligence ranking gave the City University rank number 35, considering that there are over 800 architecture schools in the US or schools with architecture program. Ranking 35 is definitely in the top 10 percentile. And what's also interesting about City College is that the most highest ranking, it is number 14 in its own category. This is not really a promotion for City College, even though I may be a little biased towards that school because I went there. What I really want to point out is the cost of education. As of January 2021, the cost of in-state tuition for City College is close to $7,000. That is the lowest number in this chart. And then if you're out of state, your tuition is $1,400. I have the website to all the schools here in column J so that you can take a look to see what other costs they also factor into the actual price of tuition. So every school has different prices for supplies, room and board, food, insurance, those kind of things. So I think this could be a great reference for you. To be honest, I think after the first year or maybe 2, I've never had to tell anybody what school I've gone to. Not that I'm ashamed of City College, I actually love City College. But you know, it doesn't sound as nice as saying you're from Cornell, Yale, Harvard, those kind of Ivy League. It doesn't roll off the tongue as nice. However, for going to City College, you do pay a price. And that price is, people always get confused when you tell them what school you went to. You see, even other architects don't even know what City College is. Unlike other CUNYs, for example Baruch, almost nobody knows about City College, except for the folks that went to City College. Did I also mention that City College looks amazing with its Gothic architecture? That if you visit its campus, it's probably one of the most impressive CUNYs, if not the most impressive CUNY. Also, the architecture program has their own school. It's called the Anne and Bernard Spitzer School of Architecture. But that name is so long that I just say City College. Who? And don't forget to hit that like button if you found this information useful. If you'd like to see more of my videos in the future, also click subscribe and hit that bell notification. Now comes to the question of whether or not people who went to the more prestigious schools, do they make more money than those who went to the less prestigious schools? And if they do, how much more? And to answer this question, I made another tab on this Excel sheet so you can take a look at it as well. Let's take a look. So first, we're going to go to the AIA Compensation Survey Calculator and pick a region. So I'm just going to do this for my own region here. And so recent college grad, we're going to go to, we're in the Mid-Atlantic, so New York. And we can see that the starting salary ranges from less than $50,000 to over $60,000. These numbers here are showing on the 25th percentile and 75th percentile. That means 25% of all recent graduates make less than this, and then 25% of all recent graduates make more than this. So the difference here is almost $10,000. Although I don't have a way of knowing the average salary of each of the graduating class from all the various schools, it would be safe to make an assumption that for those who went to less prestigious schools, let's just say for this example, they'll be making around $50,000. And for those who went to more prestigious schools, they'll be making about $60,000. And because these numbers are not available to us, we can make a few assumptions based on this. And assumption number one is that if you go to an Ivy League school, usually a lot of big name architecture firms with big budgets also have alums that went to those schools. And because of that, they have more resources, they have more manpower to be able to tap into the talent pool of the top 10. So smaller companies don't have the resources to tap into those elite talent pools, and they will usually be posting out job descriptions on Indeed or LinkedIn, any sort of other recruiting platforms. So based on these factors, I would say that it's feasible for larger companies to be able to pay more for graduates from more of the top ranked schools. Also, before I continue, let me just say that what I'm about to tell you is not financial advice. I'm just saying this for your education and entertainment, and these numbers are hypothetical. So first we're going to look at John. He's from the less expensive school, and he's going to have a starting salary of $50,000. And then we have Jason. He's from a more expensive school, and let's say that his starting salary is $60,000. After all, maybe it's not too hard to believe. We're taking a hypothetical 10-year time frame, and we have a raise percentages for the two guys being compared here. Let's say that for the first 3 years, both these gentlemen gets 10%. And then as you continue to grow, your actual percentage increase will begin to lower, because the more money you make, if you keep making 10%, like at some point your raise is going to be like $30,000-$40,000, and that's unsustainable for the company. So at some point it's got to start tapering down. And so I put 6% for the next 3 years and then 5% after that. Although of course your performance may vary. So we start off at $50,000 with John, $60,000 with Jason. After 10 years, John has taken home a total salary of $719,000, whereas Jason has taken home $845,000. That makes a total of $125,000 difference. In a 10-year time frame, with all things being equal between the two gentlemen, having a higher starting salary makes a pretty big difference, because all that amount begins to compound over time. So what's the moral of the story here? It's probably more important to get a higher starting salary. Although there are reports showing that if you jump from company to company, you actually can get to a higher salary faster versus stay in the same company. So just also keep that in mind. If you guys want to know how much salary you should be getting, then I have another video that talks about that up at the corner there. So it looks like Jason comes out on top, right? And that is true, but we have to consider one factor. That is considering that they both have zero debt. Now, what would happen if they both had to borrow money, but John went to a less expensive college and Jason went to a more expensive college? Would that change the outcome? Now, before we answer that question, let's take a look at student loans and student loan payments, which is also another tab that I've created in the Excel. So I've broken the debt down by increments. So we have the amount owed starting from 0 and then going to 50,000, 100,000, 150, all the way to 250,000. The interest rate at the time of this recording is 4%. Now for the monthly payments, I'm putting down $1,500. This is a moderately aggressive amount, and if you live in New York City, this is a very aggressive amount because the cost of living in New York is very expensive. And using the student loan payoff calculator from Dave Ramsey, I've also included that in the description below. You can see how long it will take to pay off your loan. At $50,000, if you pay aggressively at $1,500 per month, you'll be able to get out of debt in 3 years. Now if you double that amount, you're not doubling the time, you're adding 3 years and 4 months to that, so you'll finally be able to be debt-free in 6 years. Now if you add another 50K, you're not adding 3 years, but you're adding 3 years and 10 months, close to 4 years on top. So it'll take you 10 years, over 10 years to get out of debt. And then 200,000, it's gonna take you 14 years, almost 15 years. And then 250,000, it's going to take you over 22 years. That is a crazy amount of time to be paying $1,500 every month. It's like alimony. That's horrible. That's really bad. When you're paying $1,500, you're paying it from post-tax. So what we want to get is we want to get this number to its pre-tax equivalent. So what I want to do here is take the payment amount of $1,500 per month. Yearly, it's going to cost you $1,800. Let's say that your taxes is 30%. We do the calculation for that, and the $18,000 has an equivalent of over $25,000 worth of salary reduction. Like if you take that salary and you minus your student loan payment, your adjusted salary is $34,000. That's insane. And this is for someone who's coming from a more prestigious school making $60,000. How much does that equal to hourly? Let me do this calculation really quick. I'm gonna work 44 hours a week because overtime, and these overtime is unpaid, but I'm just gonna lean towards, you know, the generous side and call it 44 hours. And we have 2 weeks of vacation, let's say 50 weeks, calculate. Yeah, so this is pretty crazy. You are essentially making $15 an hour, close to $15 an hour, and that is minimum wage. You went to school for 5 years, took out a loan, do all this stuff, only to be making $15 an hour, minimum wage. That is crazy. If you calculate the whole $60,000, you're actually making $27 an hour. And what that also means is that if you have a personal goal of trying to make 6 figures, and if you're making $105,000, you minus that amount, you're actually just making $80,000. That is crazy. So just be very careful when you're just taking out student loans, and use your money very wisely starting in college, because being able to manage money and being careful with that is going to be a skill that will help you for the rest of your life. So now, taking a look at the same 2 people, let's see what happens when we add debt to their income. So now we have John, who's in $50,000 of debt. We're just gonna say 50 to keep it simple. You can make out with less or with more by going to a less prestigious school or less expensive school. And we have Jason with $150,000 debt. That's actually not too bad, coming from, let's say, you know, a pretty prestigious school. I've heard of colleagues who came out of school with $250,000 worth of debt. It's insane. So $150,000 is not unheard of. And if they're both making aggressive payments of $1,500 a month, John would basically have to live really poor for the first 3 years, maybe at his parents' house still, saving money on rent and food. And if he's able to pay it all off in 3 years as planned, then you can begin to see that his salary, even though it's equivalent to before, his salary is going to be much higher than Jason, who has to continue to pay that loan off for 10 years. So what would happen after 10 years? John would have taken home $641,000, while Jason would have taken home $587,000. So that's a difference of $54,000. So John is coming out on top. Now this is a pretty big difference in what debt can actually do. What if John takes the money and put that money into investing? So in this chart here, I've taken money out from John kind of as a forced savings, although I am keeping the numbers the same with Jason. So they have equivalent kind of standard of life, except for the first 3 years where John has to live poorer than Jason. But starting from year 4 to year 10, Jason and John have the same quality of life. And I want to keep things as equal as possible. This is the amount of money that John can actually afford to invest and put into, let's say, something like his 401k. So if we scroll down here, let's say that John puts his money into the 401k, and he takes that money and the 401k increases by 8% year over year. Just keeping things simple. We're not doing 10%, although S&P has increased 10% year over year, but let's be a little bit more conservative and say 8%. So from year 4 to year 10, after 6 years, he would have a total of $111,000 in his 401k account. And then plus his total take-home salary, he has a total of $666,900. If you take a look at Jason, he has no money to put into his 401k account, so he takes home nothing. All he has is his salary take-home. There you see the gap widen to over $79,000. Phew, that was a lot of information, and thank you guys for watching it all the way to the end. So based on this video, please leave a comment down below and let me know if this video helped you make a decision on which college you want to attend to for architecture. Also, if you are like me and you've been in the architecture profession for a few years now, please comment below if you would have done things differently. So when I was in school, I actually worked several jobs over the course of the program. I started off as a hotel receptionist, then I also worked at the CAD lab as a TA, and then I've also internship, which was actually the biggest factor that helped me land my first job right out of college. So if you're in a city like New York City, trying to get an internship can actually help you out so much when it comes to landing your first job out of college. And in addition to that, I also had financial aid. So what happened was when I graduated from college, I had 0 student loan debt and was able to start investing right away. Aside from internship, what else will help you is high degree of technology proficiency, especially software. And if you want advice on how to get better at a software called Revit, I have another video that I've linked up here for you to check out.